Auto giant Stellantis says it's already feeling the pain of Donald Trump's trade war. The company behind brands like Jeep, Dodge, Fiat, and Chrysler announced today that it expects to lose nearly $3 billion.
It's a double whammy. Washington holds tight on tariff policy, while Ottawa quietly squeezes supply chains. In the unseen battle between Trump and Carney, American citizens and businesses are taking the full impact. Auto prices are skyrocketing faster than copper, and factory owners in Detroit are racing the clock to avoid production cuts. Is the pressure to negotiate strategy backfiring? And if you're planning to buy a new car or renovate your home, it's time to pay close attention to the forces at play behind the political headlines. In 2025, the U.S. auto industry suffered one of its worst supply shocks since the pandemic. Ford projects a loss of up to $1.5 billion in operating profit this year, while Stellantis, parent of Jeep and Chrysler, reported a $2.7 billion loss in just the first half. The root cause: widespread disruption in parts and raw material supply from Canada. The North American Manufacturing Association reports that roughly 50% of aluminum and steel used in U.S. automobiles comes from Canada. Those components often cross the border multiple times for fabrication, welding, and assembly, meaning even minor border delays can paralyze entire production lines. In states like Michigan and Ohio, consumers are noticing longer wait times and surging prices. A midsize SUV that cost $35,000 in January now lists near $42,000 at many showrooms. It's not just cars feeling the pinch. Raw materials are surging across the board. Copper recently hit $5.72 per pound, its highest point since 2011. Aluminum prices have jumped 161% within the first 7 months of 2025, driving production costs up in industries and consumer goods alike. Auto manufacturers warn that if this continues, the average price of a new vehicle could rise by 20 to 25%, adding around $7,000 per car. Many consumers in industrial states like Illinois and Pennsylvania are delaying vehicle purchases, while companies like Tesla and Rivian raised prices in August. Building materials are also costly on average. A new home now costs $10,900 more, just accounting for steel, aluminum, and lumber. For many U.S. families, home construction plans have been postponed indefinitely. The combination of tariffs and import price increases is hitting American wallets hard. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, real household income could fall by 0.4% if current tariff policies remain through year-end. That small percentage translates to an added $1,300 to $4,900 per year in household spending due to higher import prices. According to Morning Consult surveys, many families are delaying big-ticket purchases like vehicles, electronics, and home renovations. Data from Experian shows personal debt, including credit card balances, is up nearly 7% from last year. Those who once lived hand-to-mouth are turning to credit cards to cover basic needs. A silent, dangerous financial spiral is forming, and credit policies, many experts argue, are accelerating it.
So this whole Greenland thing is getting kind of out of hand.
When the president on Twitter declared that he would not travel to Denmark in 10 days' time. The reason? Danish leaders wouldn't discuss selling Greenland to the U.S.
It might look like a frozen, faraway land, but Greenland is quietly giving the White House a major headache. President Trump was busy issuing tariff ultimatums. Canada and the European Union stepped into this icy territory not to sightsee, but to mine gold, molybdenum, and rare earth minerals. And believe it or not, those materials are hiding in the phone in your pocket or inside the engines of American airplanes. So what's really going on up in the Arctic, and how can one remote mine in Greenland make Washington break a sweat? Greenland, once offered to be bought by the Trump administration, has now become a hotspot in the global race for minerals. But the U.S. isn't leading this time. In June 2025, Greenland granted a 30-year mining license to Greenland Resources Incorporated, a Canadian company backed by the EU. The Malmbjerg project is expected to supply around 25% of the European Union's molybdenum, needs a metal essential for producing heat-resistant steel. That's not all. Another Canadian company, Amaroq Minerals Limited, which is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, raised £45 million in 2025 to expand the Nalunaq Gold Project and develop a new mining hub in western Greenland. All this means the U.S. is slowly being shut out of supply chains for key resources like rare earth elements, molybdenum, and titanium materials it once led the search for. Greenland holds 25 out of 34 critical minerals identified by the EU, and this new direction could reshape how the global market works. Losing first access to Greenland's mineral reserves may cause the cost of technology and defense equipment to go up in the future. For example, if a chip made with molybdenum gets 15% more expensive, then an electric vehicle or military device could cost an extra $200 to $500 just because of raw materials. Greenland isn't chasing short-term profit. Instead, it's setting a long-term roadmap for how its resources get used. Under new government rules, foreign companies must hire local Greenlandic workers and invest directly in community projects like schools, hospitals, roads, and environmental safeguards. That means more of the wealth from Greenland's ground stays within the country rather than getting shipped overseas without any local benefits. As Greenland's Prime Minister said, "We're not selling resources, we're building a future." That's one reason why Greenland is leaning toward partners like Canada and the EU, who are ready to follow these sustainability standards and provide long-term support instead of just looking for quick profits. Because of these stricter requirements, American companies used to a buy mine exit model will need to adjust if they want to compete. That could slow the U.S. down in building a new clean energy supply chain. In the meantime, products like electric car batteries, wind turbines, and energy storage devices could keep seeing high prices for the next 12 to 18 months. Greenland's pivot toward Europe and Canada isn't just symbolic, it's changing the balance of power in the global resource game. With European and Canadian firms gaining control of key mining projects in Greenland like those for molybdenum, gold, and rare earths, the U.S. could find itself locked out of supply lines it once hoped to lead. Take the Malmbjerg project. For instance, it has the green light to operate through 2055 and is set to provide a quarter of the EU's molybdenum needs. That metal is vital for defense, aerospace, and high-strength alloy manufacturing. The U.S. once looked to Greenland as a key partner to reduce its dependence on China, but now, companies like GE, Raytheon, and Tesla may have to source materials from harder-to-reach places like Brazil or Namibia, where costs and political risks are both higher. You won't feel the impact overnight, but signs are already there. A solar panel that cost $230 earlier this year is now listed at $260 at big retailers like Home Depot, largely because raw material prices are going up. And unless the U.S. finds a new path, that price gap is likely to keep growing.
More Canadians come to America than tourists from any other country. Last year, Canadians made over 20 million visits to the U.S. and spent more than $20 billion here. But this year, many are not coming to America, as I saw firsthand on a recent trip to Vermont, right near the Canadian border.
Canadian visitors didn't say goodbye, they just quietly stopped coming. No more lines of weekend cars at the border. No more cheerful voices at the outlets and cafes. They left behind unused ski passes and a once thriving cross-border friendship that now feels a little strained. Back in 2024, over 20 million Canadian travelers crossed into the U.S., spending close to $19.8 billion. But by 2025, that number is sliding fast. In June alone, cross-border car traffic from Canada dropped 33%, marking the sixth straight month of decline. At a well-known ski resort near the Vermont border, 30 to 35% of seasonal passes from Canadian guests were never renewed. That's 1 out of every 3 visitors gone, and with them, income for local ski instructors, shuttle drivers, and small restaurants. If you've ever strolled through a small town near the border, places like Plattsburgh, NY or Derby line, VT, you may already notice stores are quieter, cafes closing earlier, or fewer hands behind the counter. For local motel owners and diner staff who rely on guests from Toronto or Montreal, this isn't abstract, it's lost income day after day. The loss of Canadian visitors isn't just a footnote, it's playing out in real time at the register. In Jay-Peak, Vermont, a resort that used to see over 3,000 Canadian season pass holders now has fewer than 1,500 renewals, slashing ticket revenue by more than $1.2 million year over year. Local hotels and eateries have shortened hours or closed 2 days a week just to stay afloat. At the St. Bernard de la Colle duty-free shop, once averaging 400 transactions a day, numbers have dropped to under 200, dragging revenue from over $100,000 per day in 2024 to under $55,000 now. One store owner put it plainly, "We're sitting on double the inventory because nothing's moving." Even Vermont Bruco, a local favorite with a loyal Canadian following, saw second quarter sales drop 38%. The reason? A case of their popular IPA that used to cost 25 Canadian dollars now sells for over 36. Thanks to import taxes, about an $8 hike per case. Many customers have shifted to Canadian brands like Molson or Bose, which are cheaper and untaxed. If you're a bartender, cook, or receptionist near the border, you've probably already felt the change: fewer shifts, fewer tips, and too many empty tables where Canadian guests used to sit. With cross-border travel in retreat, towns across the northern U.S. are stepping up efforts to reconnect with their neighbors to the north. In downtown Burlington, Vermont, the popular Church Street was temporarily renamed Canada Street for the month of July. Store signs, banners, and even menus now include French translations as a warm welcome. Shops like Maple Lane Boutique and diners like North Shore Diner are offering at par pricing, meaning Canadians can pay in Canadian dollars at a one exchange rate. That can save travelers 7% to 10% on purchases enough to turn a $50 lunch from nearly 70 Canadian dollars back down to face value. There's also a new initiative called Free Canada Day, rolling out in towns from New York to Michigan, offering free admission to local attractions, lodging discounts, and special perks for Canadians visiting on July 1st, their national holiday. Some hotels even promote deals like buy 2 nights, get 1 free for Canadians, a savings of $200 to $300 per trip. These gestures are more than symbolic. For many border towns that depend on Canadian travelers, from gas stations and grocery stores to motels and roadside diners, this is a matter of survival. If Canadian guests keep staying away, the winter ahead could be a tough one.
How can we find a way to support each other, and then in addition to that, find a way to get to new markets?
Did you know that the Ford you're driving or the dishwasher you're planning to buy next month might no longer be made in the US? It didn't take a major blow from a foreign competitor. America is weakening its own manufacturing base as more and more major companies quietly move operations north, choosing Canada as their new home. In just the past 18 months, more than $7.2 billion in investment from major players like GM, Ford, Tesla, and Alcoa has quietly flowed into Canada. It's not about cheaper labor, it's about lower total costs. In Canada, industrial electricity runs around 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour, about 45% cheaper than in US manufacturing states like Ohio or Michigan. Add to that, the faster approvals getting a factory built in Canada takes months, not years like it often does in the US, especially for industries like clean energy or battery production. One example, Honda is planning a 15 billion Canadian dollars, about 11 billion US dollars, electric vehicle and battery complex in Ontario, backed by major funding from both the Canadian federal and provincial governments. Earlier, Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, secured over 1 billion Canadian dollars for its battery plant in Windsor. So what does that mean for everyday Americans? It's simple. Jobs that might have landed in Michigan or Georgia are now heading to Canada. Each complex like Honda's can mean 3,000 to 4,000 jobs, gone from the US, not just factory jobs, but construction work, parts suppliers, and shipping and logistics roles. If you live in a town that's long relied on industry like Toledo, OH or Flint, MI losing a plant might mean fewer diners staying open, daycares shutting down early, or even local home prices falling because no one's moving in anymore. The U.S. decision to raise steel tariffs to 50% has already triggered a real spike in material costs. Right after President Trump's announcement, hot rolled coil HRC, a core material for many industries, jumped about 6%, or $240 per ton. Aluminum, used in everything from food packaging to cars and electronics, shot past $1,279 per ton, up over 20% since January. For automakers, that's painful. A pickup truck like the Ford F-150 or Chevy Silverado now costs nearly $5,700 more in materials alone without any extra bells or whistles. If you were planning to buy a truck for around $45,000, that price could easily cross $50,000. And it's not because the vehicle got better, it's just the taxes. And it's not just about price tags, it's about jobs. In places like Ohio, Michigan, and Georgia, factories are getting fewer orders because they can't compete with Canada's lower costs. Some Georgia plants have gone from 3 shifts to just 1. And reports show over 3,500 workers have either been furloughed or laid off in just the last 6 months. For the rest of us, it shows up in rising prices on anything that uses metal, from soda cans to fridges to washing machines. That $799 dishwasher you were eyeing. Next month, it might cost $850 to $875, simply because of tariffs and more expensive raw materials. While the U.S. wrestles with rising tariffs and shifting investment, Canada is stepping up fast, becoming North America's new high-tech hub. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec are now being called Battery Valley, with massive projects in EV batteries, clean energy, and electronic components taking root. Swedish firm Northvolt is investing $5.2 billion in a mega battery plant in Quebec, expected to create 3,000 to 6,000 skilled jobs. According to Economic Minister Pierre Fitzgibbon, they're tapping into Canada's low-cost hydroelectric grid and government incentives that include extended tax breaks and easier approval processes for key materials like nickel and lithium. Both crucial for battery manufacturing, Canada's strategy is about more than foreign money. They're building a fully domestic supply chain, from mining and refining to assembly and recycling. That gives them protection from fragile global supply lines and an edge when dealing with carbon regulations from the US and Europe. As companies shift north, skilled American workers, especially in tech, engineering, and battery systems, face fewer opportunities. And the price of American-made goods may keep rising if we end up importing parts from Canada at higher costs. So if you're wondering why job listings in your town are drying up, or why your next microwave is $40 more than the last one, you might just need to look a few hundred miles north.
With the looming threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, a Buy Canadian movement has picked up across the country. You may have noticed it when you go into grocery stores or supply shops, a tag that tells you if the product you're about to pick up is made in Canada.
What if a simple change in consumer habits led to billions of dollars shifting hands between 2 close neighbors? If Canadian families suddenly stopped buying 6 everyday American products, would American companies even notice at first? Or would the real shock come months later as lost sales ripple through factories, small towns, and even online platforms? Imagine how daily routines in both countries might quietly transform if trusted brands slowly vanished from shopping carts. For many years, Americans saw Canada as a reliable partner in trade and daily life. But recently, as U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, energy, and autos reached new highs, Canadians have responded in a quietly powerful way. Not with protests, but by simply turning away from certain U.S. products. 6 brands stand out: peanut butter, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Amazon, Netflix, Walmart house brands, and cars from Ford and GM. This is no longer just an economic move. It has become a cultural statement. We don't support a nation that punishes us. This shift began in the spring of 2025, and by summer, the effect was visible in store aisles across Ontario and British Columbia. For American workers, especially those in manufacturing and retail, each unsold jar or canceled order represents a lost hour of work. If the boycott continues, annual losses for you aside, companies could exceed $2 billion USD, putting pressure on jobs from the factory floor to logistics and marketing teams. Peanut butter, once a pantry staple, tells a striking story. Sales of Jif and Skippy, 2 iconic American brands, dropped 34% in just 1 quarter across Canada. Supermarkets have quickly replaced them with local alternatives like Kraft Canada and Nuts to You. Even Walmart, the retail giant, has found its U.S. made goods left untouched, as Canadian shoppers favor local products or brands from other countries. The message is clear for American producers and investors. Brand loyalty can vanish quickly when national pride is at stake. The ripple effect extends to farmers supplying peanuts, workers in packaging plants, and truck drivers moving goods north. If this trend continues, the U.S. peanut industry alone could see export revenues shrink by up to 150 million USD per year. Amazon's Canadian operation took a direct hit. In early July 2025, Amazon suspended services in Quebec, leading to around 700 job losses. While some customers shifted to Canadian platforms or European tech providers, the trust gap grew. Netflix, another household name, also saw subscription numbers fall, as families questioned supporting a U.S. brand in times of economic tension. The tech sector, often seen as immune to politics, is now facing unexpected headwinds. Us. Investors and workers from software developers to warehouse staff could see income growth stall. Projections suggest U.S. e-commerce and streaming exports to Canada may drop by up to 500 million USD this year if consumer confidence does not rebound. Perhaps the most visible shift is in the auto market. After Canada imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. made cars in response to the Trump administration's moves, showroom traffic for Ford and GM sharply declined. Online searches for these brands in Canada plummeted, while orders were canceled and lots stood empty. Canadian drivers quickly switched to Korean and Japanese models like Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda. For small-town dealerships in Michigan and Ohio, every unsold car means tighter budgets and fewer jobs. Industry forecasts indicate U.S. auto exports to Canada could fall by over $2 billion USD in 2025, a sobering figure for anyone whose paycheck depends on cross-border sales.
Now, according to the U.S. Travel Association, even a 10% drop in Canadian tourists could cost the U.S. more than $2 billion in spending and threaten 140,000 jobs.
You walk into an airport that once buzzed with crowds and excitement. Now, you find rows of empty seats, silent hallways, and closed check-in counters. Sounds dramatic. This is the new reality at America's busiest airports, as airlines and travelers quietly turn away from the United States. There was a time when America's biggest airports bustled, tourists rushing, constant boarding calls, but since early 2025, over 10 major airlines, including Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, Emirates, Air France, Play airlines have quietly cut flights to the U.S. without major announcements. Now, silence lingers at O'Hare, LAX, and JFK, emptier waiting areas, fewer staff at check-in, and departure boards crowded with canceled routes. In cities like Chicago and New York, the numbers start to feel real. With 85,000 jobs at risk, families are rethinking how to pay the mortgage, keep up with college savings, or cover medical expenses for aging parents. This isn't just about a drop in tourism. It's a wave shaking the foundations of daily life, sometimes leaving the dinner table quieter, and plans for the future more uncertain. With job losses and shrinking incomes, an average family may have to cut $100 from the monthly grocery budget, often buying less fresh meat, milk, or produce. Multiply that by 85,000 workers. And local retailers and food suppliers feel the ripple, making entire cities more cautious. Higher landing fees, complicated visa procedures, and frosty welcomes at border checkpoints have made even the dream of coming to America less certain. These days, even a pricey business class ticket doesn't guarantee easy entry. Every shift cut, every lost dollar, weighs heavier when there are bills to pay and kids asking for new shoes. With fewer hotel guests, staff see their hours cut sometimes by as much as 6 hours per week. That's $240 a month money that once covered groceries, summer camps, or a weekend meal to unwind from the stress. If this continues, hotel and restaurant workers may need to tighten their budgets even further. Shopping for fresh meat, fish, and vegetables might shrink by up to 20%. That's $50 to $100 less per month for every family working in these industries. Not long ago, travelers from Scandinavia, Korea, the UK, and France would visit America touring colleges, attending conferences, or seeking a new kind of summer. Now, they're picking Canada or Japan, which seem more open and welcoming. With everyday essentials, sales expected to drop by $60 million this year. Shop owners face tough choices: cut staff hours, reduce orders, or explain slimmer margins to employees. Shelves aren't empty, but aisles often are, making it hard to plan or invest. As international visitors vanish, local milk sales could drop 15 to 20% from last year. Store owners may lose $1,000 to $2,000 in monthly revenue, affecting fresh product quality and supply, and possibly raising prices if supply chains struggle. In past years, city lights in places like New York or Miami burned bright, thanks to international visitors renting short-term apartments, packing coffee shops, bringing energy to every corner. Now, as British Airways, Lufthansa, and Jetstar all reduce flights, 1.5 million visits simply vanish. Short-term apartment rents in former gateways to America are dropping by an average of $200 per month. For tenants, it sounds like a win. But for landlords who relied on that income to pay debt or cover medical bills, it's nearly $50 million in lost revenue. Quietly, faith in the American dream slips a little more, not just in the eyes of the world, but even for those who once thought they'd finally found stability.
We're selling it for like 40% more just because it's cost so much to get, right? And there's less in stock because people aren't buying this.
Imagine you're running a small auto body shop. Overnight, steel costs shoot up 6 to 9%. Parts orders stall, and workers are sent home early. Sounds absurd, right? But that's exactly what's happening in Detroit, where Canada's silent strike on procurement rules is rippling through U.S. automotive supply chains. A Michigan small business owner opens his shop, only to find this week's steel delivery is delayed again. He's heard friends in nearby towns having similar trouble. Why are steel shelves suddenly empty? And why do prices keep rising? Recently, the U.S. placed a 50% tariff on imported steel and aluminum from Canada. Using Section 232, Canada chose not to fight back with tariffs, but instead quietly changed government buying rules and increased environmental requirements, making it harder for U.S. buyers to get Canadian steel. This has left truckers, warehouse workers, and steel plant crews in cities like Detroit with less to do. Some are called in for fewer shifts. Others watch overtime hours disappear as prices inch upward. Families start to worry if everyday costs will soon follow. For those who rely on steady pay, this uncertainty makes planning for monthly bills more challenging, and conversations at dinner tables start to shift toward cost cutting. If this pattern stays over the next 2 months, an estimated 1,500 steelworkers and drivers in the Midwest may face reduced hours or temporary layoffs as factories scramble for supplies. Even small changes in work schedules can quickly add up, putting extra pressure on households and local businesses that depend on these industries to keep moving. Chaos. The summer brings an uneasy quiet to assembly plants, where once machines ran day and night. Now some lines sit idle waiting for steel shipments that do not arrive on schedule. Ford reports a jump of $2.5 billion in added costs just since the start of the year, driven by shortages and delays. Steel and aluminum prices have risen between 6 and 9% in the last few weeks, eating into company profits and slowing production across Michigan. Factory managers are forced to cut back shifts, while some suppliers consider temporary closures to wait out the shortage. For households depending on those jobs, a single missed paycheck can mean tough choices about groceries, medical bills, or summer repairs. If shortages continue for another month, buyers could see the sticker price for new vehicles go up by as much as $400 before fall. North. Canada is investing $1 billion Canadian dollars to upgrade its steel industry, focusing on electric arc furnaces and stricter environmental standards. The plan is to make steel cleaner and more attractive for markets like the EU. This push for green steel means Canadian exports could soon find new customers abroad, while U.S. producers may face more competition, especially as electric vehicle makers and large infrastructure projects demand lower carbon footprints. For now, U.S. buyers needing green certified steel may have fewer choices and higher costs. In the next 2 months, the price of certified green steel for U.S. construction or auto projects could climb by $45 per ton, adding pressure to project budgets and renovation plans.